Marcus had always loved his diner, the small, cozy place he had built from scratch in the heart of the city. The smell of fresh coffee, sizzling bacon, and warm bread was like a melody to him, a melody that reminded him of long nights working alone, cleaning tables, and making sure everything was perfect. Yet today was different. Today, Marcus wanted to see his diner in a way he had never seen before. He wanted to experience it as a regular customer, unnoticed and unseen, to truly understand what his staff and customers felt every day. He stood in front of the mirror in his apartment, adjusting a simple hat over his neatly trimmed hair. He wore dark sunglasses, even though it was morning, and a casual jacket that hid the expensive suit underneath. His hands moved over his face as if he could change his features with a touch, but no disguise could hide the excitement and nerves racing through him. Marcus was not used to being anonymous. He was used to being in charge, to people recognizing him as the owner, the boss, the man who made the decisions, but today he wanted none of that. As he walked down the street toward the diner, he tried to blend in with the crowd. He lowered his gaze slightly, avoiding the glances of passers-by. He noticed the way people smiled at each other, the barista outside a cafe greeting a regular customer, and the children laughing as they ran past. Everything seemed ordinary, yet to Marcus, every detail was a lesson in observation. Every step brought him closer to the diner. And with each step, his heart beat a little faster. The thought of sitting at his own counter, ordering food as a stranger, filled him with both anticipation and a strange kind of fear. When Marcus reached the diner, he paused for a moment at the entrance, taking in the familiar sign above the door, the smell of frying food drifting outside, and the chatter of early customers inside. To anyone else, it was just a simple diner, but to Marcus, it was his life, his dreams, and his hard work. The thought of entering unnoticed made him smile, and yet, a small part of him worried that someone might recognize him, that someone might know the man behind the disguise. He pushed the door open gently, and a small bell announced his arrival. Marcus felt a wave of excitement mixed with nervousness. His eyes scanned the diner carefully, noticing the waitress taking orders, the cook flipping pancakes in the kitchen, and the cashier counting change with a precise rhythm. Everything seemed normal, yet he felt as if he was seeing it for the first time. He chose a seat at the counter, a spot where he could observe everything without being noticed. Marcus's mind raced as he tried to imagine himself as a stranger, someone who had no idea who owned this place. He thought about how he would judge the service, the friendliness of the staff, and the quality of the food. He wondered if the employees would be honest, kind, or distracted. Each small action he observed felt like a clue to understanding the heart of his diner. He wanted to experience every moment as it truly was, not as the owner who saw the perfect side of everything. He adjusted his hat slightly and took a deep breath, trying to calm the fluttering in his chest. He rehearsed the words he would say when ordering, simple and casual, nothing that would reveal his identity. He smiled at a customer nearby, nodded politely to the waitress passing by, and tried to blend in as naturally as possible. But inside, Marcus was alert, noticing every detail, every laugh, every glance. Every movement told him a story he had never taken the time to see before. As he waited for his order, Marcus reflected on why he was doing this. He wanted to remind himself of the joy that had inspired him to start the diner, to connect with the simple pleasures of everyday life. He wanted to see if the love and care he had put into his diner were reflected in the way it was run. Sitting there quietly, he felt a mix of nostalgia and curiosity. Every sound, every smell, every movement made him feel alive in a way he had not felt behind the desk of the office. Little did Marcus know, this simple act of blending in would lead to a moment he would never forget, a moment that would catch him completely off guard, and change the way he saw his diner, his staff, and even himself. For now, he sat quietly at the counter, the hat over his eyes, sunglasses hiding his face, waiting for his ordinary breakfast, unaware that today, even a single whisper could stop him cold. Marcus sat quietly at the counter, feeling like a stranger in his own diner. The smell of buttered toast and fresh coffee filled the air, making him smile inwardly. He watched the regular customers chatter with the staff, their laughter blending with the soft music playing in the background. To any outsider, it seemed like a normal morning, but to Marcus, every sound and every movement carried meaning. He noticed the little things he had never seen before, the way a young waitress adjusted her apron nervously, the way a regular customer sipped his coffee with the same careful routine, even the way the cook's hands moved with swift precision as he flipped pancakes and fried eggs. When the waitress approached him, Marcus practiced his disguise, keeping his tone casual. His voice was calm and ordinary as he said, "Toast, please," lightly browned. The waitress smiled politely, jotting down the order without hesitation. Marcus felt a strange thrill in the simplicity of it. He had given commands countless times as the boss, but saying a single sentence as a customer made him feel vulnerable and alive. He took a deep breath, observing her movements, wondering if she noticed anything unusual about him. While waiting for his toast, Marcus's attention wandered to the other staff. He noticed a young busboy stacking plates with care, yet occasionally glancing around nervously. He wondered if the boy felt comfortable in his role, if he knew the diner was a place where hard work and honesty mattered. Marcus's eyes then shifted to the cashier, an older man with a gentle smile, who handled change with steady hands. The man greeted customers warmly, and Marcus felt a wave of pride that someone so dedicated was part of his team. As the toast arrived, Marcus studied it quietly, noticing the perfect golden brown on each slice. He took a bite, savoring the crisp edges and soft center. It was simple food, but it carried the warmth of home, of care, and of effort. He realized that his diner was more than a business. It was a living space where people connected, where each small action mattered. Marcus watched a family in the corner laughing together, a young couple sharing a quiet moment, and he felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that his diner was part of their lives. Yet, beneath the calm, a sense of tension lingered. Marcus could feel that something unexpected was about to happen. He had come in disguise to observe, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the diner itself was watching him back. The subtle glances, the tiny gestures, everything seemed heightened, like the world had shifted slightly. He wondered if the staff suspected anything, if someone might recognize him despite the disguise. That thought made him smile and tense at the same time. The ordinary breakfast suddenly felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. Marcus continued to observe quietly, noticing the unspoken interactions, the way the young waitress gave extra attention to a regular customer, the way the cook hummed softly while working, even the small nods exchanged between employees. All of it told a story of loyalty, routine, and connection. Marcus felt an unexpected warmth, knowing that the diner had its own rhythm and that his presence, even unnoticed, had become part of it. Each small detail fascinated him, and he realized that this morning was teaching him more than any office meeting ever could. As he finished his toast, Marcus felt a growing anticipation. A whisper in his mind told him that soon, the ordinary would become extraordinary, that one small, quiet moment could change everything he thought he knew about his diner, about his staff, and even about himself. He looked around once more, taking in the familiar yet suddenly unfamiliar scene. He was ready for whatever was about to happen, ready to witness the unexpected, and unaware that the next few moments would stop him cold. Marcus leaned back slightly on the counter stool, letting his eyes wander over the diner. He wanted to see everything, every subtle action, every little habit of his employees. He noticed the cook in the kitchen, a tall man with quick hands and a calm expression, flipping pancakes with practiced ease, but every so often glancing toward the counter as if checking for something. Marcus wondered if he sensed something unusual, or if it was just routine. He smiled to himself, realizing that even small gestures could tell a story. The young waitress moved with quiet efficiency, carrying plates to tables, her face showing both focus and a touch of nervousness. She paused briefly near a corner table, adjusting a chair for a little girl who had pulled it back too far. Marcus watched her carefully, noting the patience and kindness she offered without anyone asking. He thought about how many people went unnoticed in their daily acts of care, and he felt a rush of respect for his team. They were ordinary people, yet in these small, unspoken ways, they were extraordinary. His gaze then shifted to the customers, the regulars he had seen countless times before, but now through a different lens. The old man in the corner with his newspaper, the couple sharing coffee and soft smiles, the teenagers laughing over a plate of pancakes. All of them were pieces of a living, breathing picture. Marcus could almost hear the rhythm of their lives intertwining with the diner. He realized how much of himself he had invested in this place, not just money or effort, but heart and attention, and now he saw it reflected back in ways he hadn't noticed before. Suddenly, a small noise caught his attention. A chair scraped lightly against the floor behind him, and Marcus turned just in time to notice the busboy, a young man who usually kept to himself, glancing in his direction with wide, careful eyes. Marcus froze slightly, unsure if the boy had recognized him. The thought that someone might see through his disguise sent a shiver down his spine, but instead of fear, he felt a strange excitement. The thrill of being unseen yet fully present made every moment sharper, more vivid. He took a sip of his coffee, letting the warmth settle in, and studied the interactions around him. The cashier smiled at a customer, handing back change with a kind word. The waitress balanced a tray expertly while exchanging a quick joke with a regular. The cook hummed softly while flipping eggs. The diner was alive, a network of small gestures and unspoken understanding, and Marcus, sitting quietly, felt like he had stumbled into a hidden world he had never truly seen before. As he observed, a peculiar tension began to build, not a frightening tension, but the kind that makes the air feel electric. Something subtle was about to happen. He didn't know what, but he felt it deep inside. The whisper of a moment that would change everything lingered at the edge of perception. Marcus's pulse quickened, yet he remained calm, trying not to let his presence affect the flow of the diner. He wanted to see things as they truly were, untouched by his authority, untouched by his ownership. Then, almost imperceptibly, something shifted, a quiet glance between two staff members, a hushed laugh that stopped mid-sentence, and Marcus realized that the diner was aware of him in ways he hadn't anticipated. The ordinary rhythm had taken on a new meaning, and every glance, every gesture, every small sound carried weight. Marcus leaned forward slightly, sensing that a revelation was close, something that would make him stop, make him question what he thought he knew, and perhaps make him see his diner, and himself, in a completely new light. He took another sip of coffee, his mind alert, his senses heightened. The toast he had ordered sat untouched for a moment, as if waiting for the moment to come. Marcus knew that this ordinary breakfast had already begun to transform into something extraordinary. A single whisper, a single glance, a single small act could change everything, and deep inside, he felt ready to witness what would unfold. Unaware that in just a few moments, the diner would deliver a moment that would stop him cold. Marcus was leaning on the counter, pretending to sip his coffee casually, yet every nerve in his body was alert. He had been observing the diner for what felt like hours, noting every movement, every smile, every small gesture. The ordinary routine of the morning suddenly seemed charged with meaning. It was as if the diner itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen, and then he heard it. A whisper so soft that at first he thought he had imagined it. The whisper came from behind the counter, barely audible over the clatter of plates and the hum of conversation. Marcus froze, his heart skipping a beat. He turned his head slightly, trying to catch the source without drawing attention. His eyes darted toward the staff, but no one seemed to be acting unusually. The whisper came again, a gentle murmur that seemed to carry a weight far beyond its quiet sound. It wasn't threatening or angry, but it held urgency, a hidden significance that Marcus couldn't yet understand. He strained to listen, his senses sharpened. Every sound in the diner seemed amplified, the sizzling of bacon, the scrape of chairs against the floor, the quiet laughter of a customer, all of it blended into a background symphony. But the whisper stood out like a single note of a piano in a vast hall. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, not from fear, but from the sheer intensity of the moment. He knew instinctively that this was not just ordinary chatter, that this whisper carried a message meant for him. Marcus shifted slightly on his stool, careful not to draw attention. His mind raced, trying to imagine who could be whispering. Could it be the young busboy he had noticed earlier, the one who occasionally glanced in his direction, or perhaps the seasoned cashier, who seemed to know everything happening in the diner? Even the cook might have noticed something unusual. He realized that the whisper was a kind of signal, a clue. And the more he focused, the more he felt the pull of curiosity. The diner seemed to slow down around him, time stretching in strange ways. Every movement of the staff, every glance from the customers, seemed to have purpose. Marcus's pulse quickened, and yet he remained calm, forcing himself to observe, not react. The whisper came once more, and this time he caught a few words, though not the entire message. They were fragmented, almost like a riddle, but enough to make his mind reel, enough to make him stop cold. He leaned forward, listening intently, trying to connect the dots. The message felt personal, directed specifically at him, though no one knew who he was. The realization hit him slowly, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Someone here in the diner knew, or at least suspected, that he was more than just a customer, that he was Marcus, the owner, the boss, the man behind the counter in disguise. His heart raced, not from fear, but from surprise and intrigue. The diner had revealed a secret in the quietest way possible. Marcus's eyes scanned the staff again, each one looking normal, yet he knew better now. Something subtle had shifted, the energy of the room had changed, as if the whisper had cast a spell over everyone. He could feel the weight of hidden truths, the small unnoticed connections that bound the diner together. Every movement now seemed meaningful, every glance laden with possibility. Marcus realized that this was the moment that would change everything, a small whisper with a giant impact. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. The toast he had ordered earlier now seemed secondary. The whisper had transformed an ordinary morning into an extraordinary moment. Marcus leaned back slightly, letting the intensity settle in, ready for what would come next, ready to face the revelation that the diner, his diner, had chosen to deliver to him in the quietest, most unforgettable way. He didn't yet know the full message, but he knew one thing clearly: today, nothing would be ordinary anymore. Marcus's heart was still racing from the whisper he had just heard. He tried to focus, scanning the diner carefully, trying to figure out who could have spoken. His eyes fell on a young waitress, the same one who had brought his toast earlier. She moved gracefully, balancing plates and cups with ease, yet there was a spark in her eyes that caught his attention. Something about her seemed different this morning, as if she knew more than she let on. The whisper had been soft, almost like a secret carried on the air, but Marcus could feel its weight. It was urgent, meaningful, and it seemed to reach directly to him. He watched as the waitress glanced briefly toward him, her eyes lingering just a little longer than usual. Then she looked away, as if embarrassed to be caught. Marcus leaned forward slightly, curiosity pulling him in. His pulse quickened with the possibility that she might be the one behind the mysterious voice. He tried to read her expression carefully, noticing the subtle signs, the way her hands trembled slightly when setting down a plate, the slight hesitation in her movements, the flicker of recognition in her eyes. Something inside Marcus clicked, and he realized that the whisper wasn't random. It was directed, purposeful, meant for him. But why? And how had she recognized him in disguise? He had done everything to remain unnoticed, yet somehow she had seen through it. Marcus's mind raced with possibilities, each one more surprising than the last. Could she have recognized him from the way he moved, the tone of his voice, or simply an intuition about the diner's owner? The thought made him smile inwardly, impressed that someone could notice such subtle details. He realized that this young waitress, quiet and observant, had been paying attention more than anyone else, noticing what he himself might not have even seen. As he continued to observe, she moved closer to the counter, crouching slightly to pick up a dropped napkin, and whispered just enough for him to hear, "I know who you are." Her voice was barely audible, yet it carried certainty, authority, and a strange warmth. Marcus froze, feeling a chill run down his spine. He had expected surprise, maybe even a mistake, but not this direct acknowledgement. The waitress knew, and in that knowledge, a silent connection passed between them, as if the diner itself had conspired to reveal his identity in the quietest, most human way. Marcus leaned back slowly, letting the revelation sink in. A mix of emotions ran through him: pride, surprise, admiration, and a touch of humility. He realized that this moment was not about being discovered, but about seeing the dedication and awareness of someone who truly cared about the diner. The young waitress, through her simple act of observation, had shown him more about his own place than any report or inspection could. The energy in the diner felt different now, subtle but unmistakable. Every staff member moved with purpose, even those unaware of the moment. The whispered acknowledgement had shifted the atmosphere, making Marcus aware of the hidden layers of loyalty, care, and attention that formed the heart of his diner. He smiled inwardly, feeling a profound sense of connection. The whisper had done more than reveal him. It had reminded him of why he had built this diner in the first place: to create a space where small acts of care mattered, where ordinary moments carried extraordinary meaning. Marcus realized that leadership wasn't just about rules or orders, but about noticing the people who made the place come alive, about listening, observing, and valuing the unseen contributions. The young waitress had done all of that, and in doing so, had stopped him cold, not in fear, but in awe of the small, quiet truths that often went unnoticed. He felt a new respect for his team, a deeper understanding of his diner. and an appreciation for the extraordinary power of a simple, whispered acknowledgement. As he sat there, Marcus knew that this morning would stay with him forever. A moment that began as ordinary breakfast had transformed into a revelation. One whisper, one observant gaze, one small act of awareness had changed the way he saw his diner, his staff, and even himself. The ordinary had become extraordinary, and Marcus was ready to embrace the lessons it had brought him. Marcus sat quietly at the counter, feeling the weight of the whisper still lingering in his mind. His heart was steady now, but the excitement and surprise had not faded. He realized that this was the moment he had been waiting for, not just to observe, but to understand, to feel, and to connect with the heartbeat of his diner. The young waitress had revealed more than his presence. She had revealed the depth of attention and care that existed here. He leaned back slightly, pretending to sip his coffee, but his eyes never left the staff. Watching them now, he saw everything with fresh eyes. The cook flipping eggs with a rhythm that had always seemed ordinary now appeared like a dance, full of intention and precision. The cashier handing back change with a smile was no longer just a routine, it was a gesture of warmth that made every customer feel welcome. Even the young busboy stacking plates seemed to move with purpose, as if the diner itself had breathed life into their movements. Marcus felt a sudden wave of gratitude, not for himself, but for the people who brought his diner to life each day. He had always known they were good workers, but seeing them through the eyes of a stranger made him realize how much more they were than that. They were the soul of the diner, the reason people came back, the quiet heroes behind every meal and every smile. Marcus's heart swelled with pride and admiration, and he realized that this moment, small and simple as it seemed, carried enormous meaning. He glanced toward the young waitress again, her eyes meeting his briefly, filled with a spark of understanding. Marcus smiled inwardly, feeling a connection that went beyond words. He understood now that leadership was not just about overseeing or commanding, but about noticing, appreciating, and valuing the people who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. The whisper had been more than a revelation. It had been a lesson in humility, awareness, and human connection. As he processed everything, Marcus felt the staff subtly respond to his presence. Even without knowing his identity, there was a new energy in the diner, a quiet respect that seemed to ripple through every movement. The regular customers noticed it too, though they didn't understand why. Laughter became warmer, gestures kinder, and the rhythm of the diner seemed smoother, more connected. Marcus realized that sometimes awareness alone could shift the energy of a place, and that recognition, even in the smallest form, was powerful. He thought about the mornings he had spent behind the office desk, reviewing reports and making decisions, and how different it felt to be here, among the people who made his vision real. The whispers, the glances, the subtle gestures, they had taught him more than any meeting or memo ever could. Marcus understood that leadership wasn't about authority, it was about presence, about being aware of the world you helped create, and about acknowledging the people who made it thrive. Marcus felt a gentle smile spread across his face, and he knew he had to respond. Though he remained in disguise, he decided to give a small, meaningful gesture, a nod toward the young waitress, a hint of appreciation that didn't reveal who he was. She noticed it instantly, her eyes widening with surprise, and a smile tugged at her lips. The quiet acknowledgement was enough, the moment itself carrying more weight than any words could. The diner continued its rhythm around him, ordinary to any outsider, but extraordinary to Marcus. Every plate, every cup, every gesture now held deeper meaning. He felt a new sense of connection, not just with his staff, but with the entire life of the diner. The whisper behind the counter had sparked a chain reaction, awakening him to the true heartbeat of the place he had built. By the time he finished his coffee, Marcus realized that he would never see his diner the same way again. The ordinary had transformed into something profound, a lesson in awareness, humility, and the quiet power of human connection. And as he prepared to leave his seat, he knew that the next moments, when he finally revealed himself, would be unforgettable, not just for him, but for everyone who worked tirelessly to make his diner a home for the city. Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that the moment he had been waiting for was finally here. He had spent the morning observing, listening, and connecting with his diner in ways he had never imagined. Now it was time to reveal himself, to see the reactions of the people who made his diner come alive every day. He pushed back from the counter slightly, his hat and sunglasses still shielding him, and prepared to speak. The young waitress was the first to notice the subtle change in his posture. the way his eyes held a new intensity. She glanced at him, curiosity flickering in her gaze, and he gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod, a silent signal that something was about to happen. Marcus felt the air in the diner shift, the staff suddenly a little more alert, sensing that something extraordinary was about to unfold. The ordinary morning had transformed into a stage, and he was about to become the final act. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus said calmly, letting his voice carry just enough warmth and familiarity to catch attention. "I want to share something with all of you." He slowly removed his sunglasses, letting his eyes meet those of the staff, and then lifted his hat, revealing himself fully. The diner fell silent for a brief, magical moment, the sound of clattering plates and conversation fading as every pair of eyes turned toward him. Shock and disbelief rippled across the faces of his staff. The young waitress froze mid-step, her jaw dropping slightly, while the cook paused, spatula in hand, blinking as if he had seen a ghost. The cashier's hands trembled as he adjusted the register, and even the busboy stopped stacking plates, eyes wide with astonishment. Marcus smiled gently, letting the moment settle. He saw the mix of emotions, surprise, awe, embarrassment, and finally, joy, washing over them. "I've been watching," Marcus continued, his voice steady but filled with warmth. "I wanted to see how my diner functions when I'm not around, how each of you cares for it, for the customers, and for each other." The staff's initial shock slowly softened into understanding. The young waitress stepped forward, her eyes shining with admiration and a little guilt. "We had no idea it was you," she said softly, "but we try to give our best every day, because we love working here." Marcus nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride and connection. "And that's exactly what I wanted to see," he replied. "I wanted to witness your dedication, your kindness, and the way you make this diner more than just a place to eat. You all make it a home for everyone who comes here, and for that, I am grateful." Tears glimmered in some eyes, and smiles spread across faces. The diner, once ordinary, was now filled with a sense of celebration and recognition. He walked behind the counter briefly, shaking hands, patting shoulders, and offering small words of encouragement. Each gesture was met with laughter, applause, and a renewed sense of purpose. Marcus realized that the whisper from earlier had not just revealed him, it had revealed the heart of the diner. The staff had seen him, truly seen him, and in turn, he had seen them. Every effort, every smile, every quiet act of care had mattered, and now it was acknowledged. By the time Marcus returned to his seat, the diner felt transformed. Vibrant energy hummed through the room, as if the walls themselves were alive with gratitude and connection. Regular customers who had been quietly observing the scene smiled knowingly, sensing the extraordinary moment that had unfolded before them. Marcus took a deep breath, savoring the feeling. The ordinary morning had become a memory none of them would ever forget. He looked around one last time, eyes resting on the young waitress, who smiled shyly, then the cook, the cashier, the busboy, and the rest of the staff. Each one had played a part in this revelation, each one had contributed to the magic of the moment. Marcus knew that this was more than a lesson in leadership, it was a testament to the power of recognition, human connection, and the simple acts that make life meaningful. And as he finally sat back, he realized that the whisper behind the counter had started a chain reaction, one that would be remembered in this diner forever. The diner had returned to its normal rhythm, yet nothing felt quite ordinary anymore. Marcus sat back at the counter, quietly observing the staff, the customers, and the small interactions that made his diner alive. He could feel a sense of pride and warmth spread through him, mixed with a gentle awe at how a simple whisper had led to such a profound moment. The young waitress moved around with renewed energy, her smile brighter than before, as if she had carried a secret that now connected them all. Marcus thought about the morning and how it had unfolded, from the moment he walked in disguised, to the whisper that had stopped him cold, to the revelation of his identity. Every second had taught him something new, every glance, every gesture, every small act of care had revealed the soul of the diner, and of the people who worked there. He realized that leadership wasn't about commanding from above, but about noticing, understanding, and valuing the small things, the quiet efforts, and the human hearts behind every action. He sipped his coffee slowly, letting the warmth settle in, and thought about how this day would change the diner forever. The staff would remember it, the customers would feel it, and he himself would never look at the place the same way again. The ordinary had become extraordinary, not through money, rules, or even his own efforts alone, but through the awareness, dedication, and love of the people who made it real. The whisper had been a spark, igniting recognition and connection that words alone could not describe. Marcus looked around one more time, seeing laughter at tables, careful movements behind the counter, and small gestures of kindness in every corner. He realized that these moments, seemingly insignificant, were the threads that wove the diner into a home, a place where everyone felt welcome, safe, and valued. He thought about how easy it would have been to overlook them, to get lost in reports and numbers. But today had reminded him of the beauty in observation, presence, and gratitude. He felt a gentle smile spread across his face as he remembered the young waitress's eyes when she whispered, "I know who you are." Those words, simple and quiet, had carried more power than any grand announcement. They had reminded him that human connection often comes in subtle, unnoticed ways, and that the impact of recognition, even small, could change the energy of a room. The diner had spoken to him through a whisper, revealing not just him, but itself, and the hearts of the people within it. Marcus finished his coffee, leaving only a few crumbs from the toast, and realized that the day had given him more than observation. It had given him understanding, humility, and inspiration. He knew he would carry this morning in his memory forever, a lesson in leadership, human connection, and the extraordinary power of small, thoughtful actions. Every smile, every glance, every quiet act of care mattered more than he had ever imagined, and today had shown him why. He stood slowly, straightening his jacket, ready to leave the diner but feeling deeply connected to it and its people. The staff waved, smiled, and offered small nods, gestures that spoke louder than words. Marcus felt a sense of fulfillment unlike any he had ever experienced, knowing that the diner had been more than just a business to him. It had been a living, breathing space shaped by countless small acts of dedication, kindness, and attention. As he walked out into the morning sunlight, Marcus looked back once, seeing the diner alive, vibrant, and full of energy. He knew that the whisper behind the counter had not just stopped him, it had awakened him, teaching him that the heart of any place, any business, any community, lies in the care, attention, and humanity of the people within it. And in that moment, he understood something profound. The extraordinary often hides in the ordinary, waiting for someone to notice, to recognize, and to cherish it. Marcus smiled to himself, walking down the street, carrying the lessons of the morning with him, ready to return another day, knowing that every ordinary act could hold extraordinary meaning, and that a simple whisper could change everything.